So I hope people can see my screen.
Yeah.
I hope people can still see my screen.
Yeah.
So yes, I want to talk about interview strategy today, but I want to start by asking a couple of questions for the people who are here. And it's great to see you. This is going to last approximately 40 to 50 minutes. I want people to interrupt. So if you've got questions during it, don't hesitate to interrupt. But I want to ask everybody two questions before they start. And the first question I want is, why are you at an interview? We've all done interviews, but why are you there? Why are you at an interview? That's the first question, and I want you to write these down or screenshot them. Second question is, what's your role at an interview? So the first question is, why are you at an interview? And the second one is, what is your role at an interview? And I want you to either write these down, and I want you to screenshot them, and I'm going to put you into breakout rooms. I'm going to do that now. And I'm going to put you into maybe 4 people per breakout room. And I am, if I can find out where my breakout rooms have gone.
I think, Survi, can you make him the co-host?
Okay. There we go. Great. So I'm going to create 4 breakout rooms because there's 16 participants. And I want you to consider these questions for about 3 minutes. I'm going to time it, and I'm going to come back in 3 minutes time. And I want some feedback from you. We can either do it orally or we can do it in chat. But I want you to think about, why are you at an interview? Why are you at an interview? And what is your role as an interview when you're there? Okay. So I'm going to create these rooms now, and I'll see you in 3 minutes time.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me?
Hello.
Hi, Karan. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good as well. So I think we are supposed to look at no, Meenakshi, I can't hear you.
I'm sorry.
Meenakshi is asking, no, I can't hear.
Okay, she cannot hear us.
Meenakshi.
Yeah, we cannot hear her.
Meenakshi, maybe try to reconnect the audio. Okay, so basically we have to learn about why we are at an interview and what is our role at an interview. So what do you think, Karan?
Talking about why we are at an interview. Just to grab a job, I think.
Yeah. And what is our role at the interview?
Our role is interview ourselves, and just a second, I'm sorry. I'm getting it. Just sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, so basically I feel that our role at an interview is to basically give our best shot so that we can demonstrate that we are good at what we applied for, we can get the job. So we are at an interview because we want to prove ourselves and get the job. But our role at the interview is to be the best candidate, I think.
Yeah, just to express ourselves so that we can get selected.
Yeah.
For the role which we are applying for.
Yes, that's what I believe in. Yeah. I think that's good. Meenakshi, do you want to add anything? You can add it from the chat if you like. Okay, I think not for now. We'll move on then, and I think we might have to go back. Let's go back to the meeting, I guess.
Sure. Thank you.
No worries. See you.
think we are back.
I hope so. I think the breakout rooms are going to close in 20 seconds. It has a Zoom has a 60-second countdown.
Okay. I got the countdown and people in my group, I think, just clicked on OK.
Yeah, that's absolutely fine.
I ended up speaking alone for the last 10 minutes. I have to go back.
Okay, well, we'll see if everyone's back.
I think everyone's back now.
Okay, great. So what kind of things came out? What did people think? Why are you at an interview? What kind of thoughts did we have on that area? Why are you at an interview?
I think to get a job. And
okay, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you know, to get the role.
That's what also we discussed.
Anything else?
I think one interesting conversation we had was to also interview the company and see if it is the right fit for you. It's a two-way.
Yeah,
actually,
I think
we learn lots of. Actually, we learn lots of skills in our college and in our society. So we implementation all those skill in our companies. So we go for the job and clear the interview.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't catch that last comment. Could you repeat it, please?
Yes, I said that we have lots of skill and we impress to interviewer actually. We have those skills.
Yeah, to just showcase our skills and like.
Yeah,
show
I
our
think that's absolutely true.
Projects have done.
Okay, really interesting. Thank you. And the second question I was asking is, what's your role at the interview? What's your role as the candidate?
To perform the best, basically to perform at your level.
Yes,
yeah,
that's
and
true.
To like impress the interviewer.
Impress the interviewer, yes. Well, actually, you put your finger on it, right? Now, it's interesting me because I was actually interviewing last week. I was involved in a selection process for a role at UCD, and in answer to the first question, the which may surprise you, is why are you at an interview? You're at an interview because somebody thinks you can do the job. Because we sat down to shortlist the candidates who we were going to interview, and everybody we interviewed, we read their application letter, we read their CV, we looked at their work history, we looked at their academic background, we looked at the skills they had, and we went, yeah, this person can do the job, you know? That is why you're at the interview, okay? Because believe me, the applications that we got and we thought this person, you know, they lack what's necessary for this role, they didn't get an interview. They were not shortlisted. So why you were at an interview is because somebody already thinks you can do the role. Now, that comes to the second stage, which is, you know, your role at the interview is to show how you can do this. As somebody said, to showcase your skills. When I get to the interview, I can't just rely on the fact that somebody has read my CV. I must go in there and I must be very explicit. I must be very forthright. I must be very clear about what it is that I'm bringing to the role. And I think these are two things that candidates need to realize from the very beginning. It does not matter what job you're going for, right? If you have been shortlisted for an interview, it's really good news. It means that somebody has sat down, they've looked at your application, or they've had a recommendation from somebody, or that you've been referred by an agency, or whatever reason, right? But they think you can do the job. Because if they thought you could not do the job, you wouldn't be coming to interview, okay? Now, there are exceptions. There are sometimes there are roles and they decide they're going to interview everybody who applies, but that's very unusual because it would just take forever to do that. So the key thing about an interview is that, you know, it's good news. If you've gotten to interview, they've looked at it and they've gone, yeah, for this role, this person. So your role at the interview is to be an advocate. It's to say to somebody, this is who I am. This is what I'm bringing. This is what into the role, and that's what I want to talk about here. We've done the feedback bit, right? So with an interview, I'm very fond of saying that there are 3 C's that you need to be very clear on. And I like to think of this as a 3-legged stool, okay? Because you've got 3 parts to it: content, communication, and confidence, okay? Content, communication, and confidence. If you have no confidence in yourself, then it is very difficult for an interview panel to be confident about you. And I see this from many candidates who'll go to me, Mark, I'm very nervous about this job interview. You know, I know other people are going for it and they're better than me. You know, I don't know. You're at the interview. They've already looked at your application and they've gone, we like this individual. We want to talk to this individual. We want to see what this individual is like. You can take confidence from that, and you should take confidence from that. There hasn't been a mistake. They're looking for a mix of skills, and it's your job to communicate those clearly. I worked in New Zealand, as I mentioned at the beginning, for about 5 years, between 2005 and 2010. And even though Ireland and New Zealand both have English as their primary language, they both also have other languages, but English is the primary used language. But it's different in different countries, okay? So the language and the way I use English in Ireland is not the same. And I could use phrases and I could use expressions, and my Kiwi colleagues would look at me blankly and they go, what is he on about? What's he talking about? I don't understand. And the other thing is, for people who've been in Ireland, Irish people speak very quickly. We speak fast and we run our words together. You know, when an Irish person wants to know how, says hello, they go, how's it going? Right? And you're going, what does that even mean? You know? So the first thing you've got to realize is that your communication must be clear. Your communication must be succinct. And that's difficult because when you're in an interview, you know, you're nervous, your heart rate is up, your adrenaline level is up, you're breathing more quickly. And when that happens, you start to speak more quickly. Slow down. Because if you speak too quickly and you run your words together, they're just not gonna understand you. They're just not gonna get it. And very likely they won't ask you to repeat it. Very likely, if they don't understand you, they won't ask you to repeat it. And people have said to me before, oh, Mark, I'm very worried going into an interview in Ireland because, you know, my accent is very strong, and accent isn't a problem. Accent is not a problem. Speed is the problem. Accent is fine as long as you're speaking slowly and clearly. It's much easier to understand. Content goes without saying. If you walk into an interview and you've got nothing to offer, then you're in trouble. But you should have something to offer because you've written an application, you know what you're talking about, you've applied for the job, you've thought about your skills, you've thought about what you're bringing to it. It's all about articulating that in an interview. So I call it the 3 C's: content, communication, and confidence. And it doesn't matter whether it's a virtual interview or whether it's an in-person interview. It's about slowing down, delivering the content, and speaking with confidence. So I thought I'd look at, and please forgive the stereotypical stock image, what do employers want? What do they want? Because it's really important when you go to an interview, okay, they like what they see, they like the application, what do they want? And to do this, I sort of looked at 2 areas. I looked first of all at recruitment surveys of graduate employers as to what they're looking for. And they essentially all came up with this. And this is based on research that's been done in North America, in Europe, in Australasia, which are the main areas that I've worked in. And what they've said is employers are saying when we're recruiting a graduate, we want a mix. We want good academic record, we want evidence of interest in the job, and we want evidence of relevant skills. Okay, and this comes sometimes as a bit of a shock to some candidates, because I've had candidates, particularly candidates who have come through the university or the schooling system, the education system, and this is their first job. And they think because up to now, everything has gone on their grades. You know, the better the grade I get, the better the course I get into, the better the university I go to, the better the options I get. Everything's based on grades. I get on the dean's list dinner if I have the best grades. Great. But for an employer, the best grades isn't the only factor. They're looking for other things as well. They're looking for your teamwork skills, your communication. They're looking for relevant skills. Can you work with other people? Are you someone I can rely on? Are you interested in the sector? They're looking for a mix of skills. So from an employer's point of view, it's important that you understand that they're looking for things in the round. They're not just looking for one thing. And I've had candidates say to me, but I'm really good at that, and they didn't hire me. Why not? Well, probably because they thought you weren't a good fit with their team, because that's their big thing. They want someone to fit their team. And it's a good way to think of it is like a rowing boat. They're going to put someone into that boat, and that person has to work with those other people. And if they get a sense that you don't work well with other people or you don't fit this team, it doesn't matter how good you are, because you can be the most brilliant person in the world, but your 3 colleagues will beat you every time because they're three against 1. It's the old story of picking up a table. You know, it's very difficult to pick a table up on your own. It's dead easy to do it with 2 or 3 people. It's not twice as hard with one person. It's 3, 4, 5 times as hard. So fitting into the team is really important from their point of view. So when I went to talk to employers, they sort of said there are 3 key things that they see lacking in candidates. And the first one they all said was, commercial awareness. The first bit I looked at, I was looking at surveys. This is some queries that I do myself, because as a career consultant, I spend a lot of time talking to graduate employers, and I always ask them these questions. What are you seeing as the holes? What's lacking in candidates, not just from UCD, but from other places? And over the years, this is what's come through consistently. One is they'll say, candidates lack commercial awareness. I mean, I want to talk about what's going on in my sector, and they haven't done enough homework. They don't know enough about my area. So the first thing I would say to you about an interview is make sure that if you're applying for a job with a startup organization or an established organization, you understand what area they work in and what are the big factors. I mean, a very common question here in Ireland for the last few years has been the obvious one, which is, what do you think the impact of Brexit will be on our organization? Now, there is no right answer to that question, because there isn't a solution. Nobody knows. What they're looking for is an informed discussion, that someone has been making sure that they understand what's going on in the sector and what that impact might be. So they're looking for an informed discussion. They're not looking for a correct answer. They're looking for an informed discussion. Second thing they'll say is, why us? Why do you want to work with our organization, our established organization? Why do you want to work in this organization? Why do you want to join our startup? What is it about us? And sometimes they'll ask about the role. They'll say, why do you want to do, a systems analyst role here? But more often it's, why our organization? And I remember, it's a long time ago now, but I was at a briefing by a company called Reuters, which you may have seen. You'll see them sometimes referred to in news broadcasts, because they do a lot of that. And they were saying, for God's sake, will you tell them to stop saying that we're journalists? Because we're not. We do, but that's about 5% of what we do. It's only 5% of what we do. It just happens to be the thing that's on the telly. Right? So it's the bit that sticks in people's head. So understand who the organization is and what they do, because that way you can say, this is why I want to join your organization. And they get very upset. They're really critical of candidates who have not done this homework. And the third thing that they say that candidates lack is they lack ambition. Why do you want the job? Where do you see yourself going? And that's really important to them. And the reason that the ambition question is really important is because if I'm hiring somebody, I kind of want them to stay for a while. Because if I hire somebody and I train them and 4 months later they go, Mark, I'm sorry, it's not working out for me, I'm leaving. That's the worst case for me. That's absolutely the worst case. because it costs me time and resources and money to train someone up and they leave. So I'm looking for your ambition. Why do you want to do this and where is it going? Because I'm thinking, okay, that makes sense in terms of the job they're applying for here with my organization. Because the more you're invested in developing yourself in this area, this is a good thing for me. And I'm going to stop sharing right now because I'm going to share something else. So don't turn off the recording. I want to share a very small video. Where did my sharing thing go? There we go. Share screen. Now this should work. So I've got my fingers crossed.
I call it the golden circle. Why, how, what? This little idea explains why some organizations and some leaders are able to inspire where others aren't. Let me define the terms really quickly. Every single person, every single organization on the planet knows what they do, 100%. Some know how they do it, whether you call it your differentiating value proposition or your proprietary process or your USP. But very, very few people or organizations know why they do what they do. And by why, I don't mean to make a profit. That's a result. It's always a result. By why, I mean what's your purpose? What's your cause? What's your belief? Why does your organization exist? Why do you get out of bed in the morning? And why should anyone care? Well, as a result, the way we think, the way we act, the way we communicate is from the outside in. It's obvious. We go from the clearest thing to the fuzziest thing. But the inspired leaders and the inspired organizations, regardless of their size, regardless of their industry, all think, act, and communicate from the inside out. Let me give you an example. I use Apple because they're easy to understand and everybody gets it. If Apple were like everyone else, a marketing message from them might sound like this. We make great computers. They're beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. Want to buy one? Meh. And that's how most of us communicate. That's how most marketing is done, that's how most sales is done, and that's how most of us communicate interpersonally. We say what we do, we say how we're different or how we better, and we expect some sort of behavior, a purchase, a vote, something like that. Here's our new law firm. We have the best lawyers with the biggest clients. We have, we always perform for our clients, do business with us. Here's our new car. It gets great gas mileage. It has, leather seats. Buy our car. But it's uninspiring. Here's how Apple actually communicates. Everything we do, we believe in challenging the status quo. We believe in thinking differently. The way we challenge the status quo is by making our products beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. We just happen to make great computers. Want to buy one? Totally different, right? You're ready to buy a computer from me. All I did was reverse the order of the information. What it proves to us is that people don't buy what you do, people buy why you do it. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. This explains why every single person in this room is perfectly comfortable buying a computer from Apple. But we're also perfectly comfortable buying an MP3 player from Apple, or a phone from Apple, or a DVR from Apple. But as I said before, Apple's just a computer company. There's nothing that distinguishes them structurally from any of their competitors. Their competitors are all equally qualified to make all of these products. In fact, they tried. A few years ago, Gateway came out with flat-screen TVs. They're eminently qualified to make flat-screen TVs. They've been making flat-screen monitors for years. Nobody bought one. And Dell came out with MP3 players and PDAs. And they make great quality products, and they can make perfectly well-designed products, and nobody bought one. In fact, talking about it now, we can't even imagine buying an MP3 player from Dell. Why would you buy an MP3 player from a computer company? But we do it every day. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. When we communicate from the outside in, yes, people can understand vast amounts of complicated information like features and benefits and facts and figures. It just doesn't drive behavior. When we communicate from the inside out, we're talking directly to the part of the brain that controls behavior, and then we allow people to rationalize it with the tangible things we say and do. This is where gut decisions come from. Sometimes you can give somebody all the facts and your figures, and you say, I know what all the facts and details say, but it just doesn't feel right. Why would we use that verb? It doesn't feel right, because the part of the brain that controls decision-making doesn't control language. And the best we can muster up is, I don't know, it just doesn't feel right. Or sometimes you say you're leading with your heart, or you're leading with your soul. Well, I hate to break it to you, those aren't other body parts controlling your behavior. It's all happening here in your limbic brain, the part of the brain that controls decision-making and not language. But if you don't know why you do what you do, and people respond to why you do what you do, then how will you ever get people to vote for you or buy something from you, or more importantly, be loyal?
So, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. Because when they get the idea of why you do something, you're trying to drive their behavior. You're trying to get them going, this person wants to do this. And I've had that in one of the phrases I once picked up at a graduate recruiters conference was that we hire on aptitude over ability every day of the week. And when I asked somebody once why they had hired somebody into a finance role with a PhD in biochemistry, they said to me, well, what I had was an intelligent, motivated person. I can send them on the training course. That's the easy bit. So the key thing I want to take away, people don't buy what you do. It's why the ambition question is why us? I said commercial awareness, why our organization? What's your ambition like? Excuse me. What's your ambition like? Where do you see yourself going? Why do you want to do this? It's really important in an interview. So going into an interview, and probably the reason why you got the interview is that you sat down and you worked out what are my key messages for this role. In terms of the skills that they've outlined in the job description, what are my silver bullets? I like to think of them as silver bullets. These are my key things that I'm bringing to this role. Now, you've probably done this before the application stage, but go back and revise it. Take a little time to recap, do your research, understand what you're saying. So when they say, what key things are you bringing to this role, you can go bang, 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 bang. Example, example, example. Talk to people. Talk to your friends and your friends' friends and your friends' 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 friends and some lesser well-known friends of these. People will want to help you. If you say, I'm going for an interview with this thing, you've been working in this sector for the last 3 years. What's it been like? I mean, how did it pan out differently to the way you thought it was going to be when you started? What was good? What was bad? What surprised you? What didn't? Talk to people, talk to people. The more you talk, the more your ideas will ferment, and the more your ideas will become clearer to you, and they will sound much, much better in the interview. Bear in mind, as I said, there's an element of fit-in ability, that you want to fit into the organization. That's what they want to do. They want you to fit into the organization. They're trying to drop you into their team. And they've got 3 big questions. Can you do the job? Will you do the job? Will you fit in? The first one's pretty much been answered, because you wouldn't be at an interview without it. You would probably not be at an interview if they didn't think you could do the job. They now want to know, will you do the job? I mean, are you actually somebody who wants to do this job? Are you somebody who is going to do this for us? And then, will you fit in around here? Will this person work with it? And I remember one candidate saying to me, they got a job with a law firm, and their very final interview was with a partner in the law firm. And well, I was going to say the candidate, but I suppose she was the candidate then. But she got the job, but she said she was very nervous about. She'd gone through 2 or 3 rounds of interviews already. She didn't know why they wanted another one, and this guy was a partner in the firm. Why on earth? Anyway, she went into the interview. And he said to her, I see from your application that you were involved with a charity, and you did some charity work. I think it was to do with feeding the homeless. I think it was a soup kitchen she was involved with. That doesn't really matter. And she said, we spent 45 minutes talking about that. He had been involved in some similar charity work. And at the end of it, she said she walked out of it, and she said through the entire time she was waiting for the real questions to start. And they never did. And she said, it was only after I started working here I began to realize what that interview was about. And that interview was about will I fit into that guy's team? Because we work long hours. Lots of people work long hours. And we work hard, and we're a good team, and we get on well together. And that was important for him. It was important that they would fit in. And that was what that discussion was about. It wasn't about a technical aspect of the job. It was about, will you fit into our team? I know you can do it, but will you fit into our team? So any given interview structure will have these components. Either some introductory and opening questions, behavioral questions, maybe a work sample, some hypothetical questions. They'll then flip it and they'll ask you questions, and then they'll do a recap and a wind up. So introductory and opening questions, they may tell you a little bit about their organization. They'll say things like, tell me about yourself, or take me through your CV. Why do you want this role? Why are you the right person for this role? What do you know about our organization? Where do you see yourself in 5 years' time? So these are all the kind of questions I've been talking about up to now. These are the opening questions. Let the candidate pitch themselves. So you want to be ready to go, okay, I am a recent graduate from University College Dublin. I've studied whatever the heck you've studied. The reason I got into that was because I'm interested in whatever. As part of this program, I've been involved in A, B, C, D, E, F, G, all making sense in terms of the role. And where I see myself going now, and the reason why I want this role is so you have your pitch ready. These questions are going to come. They may not use these exact words, but these questions are going to come, and they're going to come at the start of the interview. So get ready to answer these. They may ask you about your weaknesses, but we'll talk about that in a minute. So tell us about yourself. It's a very common question, and people always say to me, where do I start with this? You start with where you are and why you want the role. You keep it concise. You highlight your fit for the job. I am finishing up a degree in, I am whatever it is that you're doing. You pick up on the key selling points from your extracurricular activity, from your work experience, from your internship, from your academic history, so that you're talking about what it is that you're bringing to the role. Picking up on your primary selling points and being enthusiastic. I'm looking for a new challenge. I'm looking for a new role. The reason why I'm interested in this job is. Always talking about your strength, your experience, your education, and your career objectives. So you're setting it. When they say, tell us about yourself, when they asked me that question the last time I was at an interview, I didn't tell them that I like to go hill walking. I didn't say, one of my favorite things in the whole world is to get out in nature, to get away for a couple of days, to hitchhike across the hills. I love doing it. I can eat as much as I want when I'm doing it, because I'm always going to lose 4 kilos in an 80-kilometer walk over the hills in 4 days. I don't say that. That's got nothing to do with the job. They're not interested in me, the hill walker. They're interested in me contributing to their organization. In terms of weaknesses, I always say it's a good idea to pick on a weakness that makes sense in terms of the role. Everybody has a weakness when they're starting a new job. We go into jobs to grow. We don't go into jobs to stagnate. So there'll be areas of the role where you're going to have to learn and you're going to have to come up to speed. That's okay. They already know about this. They've brought you to interview. It's not a major issue. So, in terms of this role, I don't have that much experience in X. I do have some, and I understand that you've got training programs or whatever that can help me accelerate and develop in this area, as I have done previously in a different role where I had to adapt and learn and move on. And, I'm a quick learner and it works very well. So weakness, action, result. Anticipating the needs of the role. A mistake that some candidates make is they say, well, this was my weakness. I've now done this and I fixed it. The problem is that if you get a nasty person like me at interview, I'll go, well, that's really impressive because it shows self-critical thought, it shows taking action, and it shows, positive resolution. That's really good, but it's not actually a weakness anymore. So please give me a weakness. So when you're talking about it,
I want to ask, weakness, action, result, is it like how you elaborate your weaknesses or how you elaborate your strengths? I mean, I don't really follow
Okay.
how you would use this framework.
Sure. What I'm getting at is, in terms of the weakness, you're identifying an area that you have to grow in, that you need to learn in, okay? So it might be managing people. Let's say you're going into a role where you haven't had much people management experience to date, but you're going into a role where you're going to be managing people, okay? Well, I would immediately pick that up. I would say, okay, well, in my current role, I don't have any direct reports. However, I have been involved in managing people in a previous role, in a previous job. I have been involved in managing people in some extracurricular activity that I've been involved with. So I do understand the concepts of managing people. I've had some training in it, but not a lot. I'll need to get more. I'm confident that I'll be able to do it well, because previously when I did manage 2 people, the feedback was very strong. And I'm looking forward to the challenge of growing and developing and taking on with that. Because what I'm doing is I'm positioning myself in the role. Very often people will use weaknesses that are what I call generic. They'll say things like, I'm a perfectionist, or, you know, come on, none of us are perfectionists. And well, that's not fair. There are people who are perfectionists, but interviewers have heard that from every other candidate, and they no longer believe anybody. Okay. They've heard it so many times. Okay. So what I'm saying to you is identify an area of learning for yourself in the role, and talk about the excitement you have towards developing this skill. Does that answer your question, Sarabi?
I think that's really, really interesting, because a lot of the times, I mean, online you would just find people who would say that you just list your weaknesses and you just tell the interviewer how those are your weaknesses. But I never really thought that you could actually look at the role and identify what your weakness could be from that role, which makes a lot of sense. Thank you for that.
Sure. I mean, and some candidates have said to me before, but Mark, why would I tell them about a weakness? You're at interview. They already know that, you know, in the case I used that, you know, don't have any direct line reports. They know, they've got your CV, right? If this was a big issue, you would not be at interview. So it's demonstrating that you're understanding the role, and it demonstrates thinking. And I mean, I've discussed this strategy with graduate recruiters, and they generally will say something along the lines to me of, yes, because we like the idea that someone is thinking about the role and thinking about themselves into the role and thinking about coming up with a positive solution. So it's always a good idea to engage. And bear in mind, I mean, one small example from, gosh, I think it was only about 6 weeks before, I think it was only about 6 weeks before we locked down. We'd had some interviews on campus, and I had to go to I had to bring them lunch. I had to go and get their sandwich order, right? Because that's how it works. It was my turn, right? So I went to the interviewers around about lunchtime. And on my way in, I saw a candidate coming out, and she was shaking her head, and she was going, and I said, "You okay?" And she said, "Oh," she said, I just blew it. And I said, "Really?" And she said, "Yeah, I got into a real row with the interviewers. And I, basically told them they were wrong. And, I don't think that wasn't very clever." I said, "You never," and she goes, "No, it's awful." I said, "Look, come back and talk to us again." She said, "Okay." So I went into the interviewers and I said, "So what do you want for lunch?" And I got their lunch order, and then I couldn't stop myself. And I said, "Are you happy with the caliber of the candidates that you've had this morning?" And they said, "Oh yeah, we've had some really good ones." And then one guy piped up and he said, "The last candidate was brilliant. I mean, she really put us through the ringer. I mean, we had a really good discussion about whatever, right?" And again, the candidate thought that was terrible, but in fact, it had been fantastic. So always engage. Competencies are something you hear a lot about in interviews. And you often hear that we're going to do a competency-based interview or a strengths-based interview. There's some differences between those two, but they're essentially the same. And the competencies are based from the job description. And I'm not getting into this now, but when you're preparing for an application, you're pulling out what do they want, where do I have examples of this, and typical competencies: IT, self-motivation, project management, communication, whatever. So you want to think through what those competencies are. And you always know when you're being asked a competency-based question because it starts like this. Tell me about a time when. Give me an example of. You had to meet a tight deadline, you had conflicting priorities, you took the lead in a role, whatever. And if you type competency-based questions into a search engine, you'll get 1,000 of them popping up at you. The key to dealing with them is, first of all, always to use a concrete example. It doesn't matter where the example comes from. It can come from a summer job or an internship. It could come from a class project. It could come from some volunteering you're involved with. It could come from extracurricular activities. Doesn't matter, but it is an example. It's not you speaking hypothetically. They've asked for an example. And you always break it down. You think of the question and then you organize your thoughts. And you talk about, okay, well, this was the situation. This was the task. This is what I did. And this was the result, and this is what I learned of it. So work your way through the STAR formula: situation, task, action, result. Very straightforward. So an example would be, a customer rang up complaining that they waited for more than 2 weeks for a reply from the sales team. They hadn't heard anything. I needed to fix this because obviously we don't want customers thinking that we're neglecting them. I apologized, got their detail, passed on to the head salesperson, got back to them within an hour. I investigated why the query hadn't been answered, discovered there'd been an issue with the telecoms. And just incidentally, all of UCD's telecoms are being changed over at the moment. So we're going to have this problem in a big way as the telecoms system gets changed over. And then I let the client know, and we discovered, and we offered a goodwill discount on the next order. The client came back to us and stayed with us. So it's a really simple example, but it's broken down into these 4 parts. And I have been on some mock interviews with employers recently, and almost always when they're giving feedback to candidates, they'll say, look, I'm looking for a STAR answer. And I once saw the scoring scale. There was a 100-point scoring scale from a company, and they offered, I think it was 10 or 15 points for the situation and the task. So it was like maybe 30 points for the whole lot. And then they offered, 30 points for the action, or 40 points for the action and 30 points for the result. So they really want to know, what did you do and what did you learn from it? What did you take away from that? Because that's more important than just fixing the problem. So situation, task, action, result. Technical questions may or may not come up. If they do come up, somebody once said, get it right. Technical
I also want to ask another thing with
Please, go.
So, I saw, when I was preparing for my interviews, I saw this alternative to STAR. It's called PAR. It's basically problem, action, result. So they just...
Yeah. It's exactly the same. Yeah. There's a lot of these acronyms out there. You've got STAR, you've got PAR, you've got, what's the other one? Situation, process, outcome, SPO, situation, process, outcome. There's a lot of different monikers on it. I just find it easy to remember STAR.
Sometimes it is very difficult to kind of do it in a very concise way. So I think that is the challenge there.
Very much so. And it's why it's worth doing them in advance and having, a number. They're going to ask me about working in a team. They're going to ask me about having competing priorities. So I would have 2 or 3 examples, and I would have them done earlier. I would, these questions are not secrets. These questions are all over the internet. So you can pull them down and you can practice.
Yeah.
And practice makes perfect, as anybody who dances will tell you. So it's really very simple. But with technical questions, get it right, or at least get the method right. In fact, the method is more important. It's about, if I'm asked a technical question, that I approach it in the right way.
We also have one question in the chat.
Please.
It goes back to a little bit for
please.
It's if in an interview the question comes introduce yourself, do we need to speak in our core skills or just basic information and experience? I
think that's very much, if someone says, please introduce yourself, that's another variation on the tell us about yourself question. So you should always talk about, situate yourself now, in the now, okay? Situate yourself today. They're not asking you, to introduce yourself as a 10-year-old. They're asking you to introduce yourself today. So talk about, you know, I'm recently completed a degree in, or I'm just, or whatever situation you're in. Talk about now, and then talk about the skills that you have developed for, the skills that you have developed which are relevant to the role that you're applying for. And then, yes, you know, you can put in a little bit of extra. You can say, you know, and I'm really interested in building my career, and this is why I'm applying to you, because I see this as part of my trajectory. And, you know, one of the things I like to do when I'm in spare time is, you know, I dance, or I go swimming, or whatever it is, or I'm involved with a local theater group, or whatever. You can throw in a little bit of extracurricular color, as it were. But when they ask about yourself, they're really, from their point of view, the question they're really asking is, in the context of the role that you're applying for today, introduce yourself. So it's got to do more with the role and your connection to the role in the organization. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Okay, is that okay? Cool.
I had one.
Please tell me.
So this refers to the first point you made a long back. I was waiting for the question answer thing, where, you know, questions like, what do you think is impact of COVID on our industry, or impact of Brexit on our industry, or our company? So these questions are something I would like to ask, like I would expect the employer to answer, because they know no matter what I say, they are the ones they will be best suited to answer what is the impact on their economy or industry. So I would always, this is my go-to question, the question answer. But if at all they happen to ask me earlier before I get to ask them, how can I turn it around, and like, or even if
Very
I
much
do
so.
answer,
Well,
I'll generalize. I don't want to.
I think there are two elements to this, Tommy. The first is that, as you know, interviews are conversations. Okay, so both people are going to speak. Okay, so if they have brought that up earlier, before your questions have come in, you can say, if they say to you, do you have any questions for us? You say, well, I was going to ask you about XYZ, ABC, LMN, but we've covered that already. So what I would always say is simply refer to it. And this can sometimes happen in interviews where you're sitting there going, this guy has asked me this question already. Why is he asking me this question a second time? Now, sometimes that happens because the interviewers are just bad at their job, and they're asking the same question twice. And believe me, there are enough people out there who are bad at their jobs as there are people who are good at their jobs. The second reason they can be doing it is to see, will the candidate change? You know, you've already given me one answer to this. Are you going to contradict yourself? So as a candidate, I would always connect my answers. I would say, well, as I was saying earlier, as when we were talking about, and then I would build on whatever I had said previously to connect the answers.
That makes sense. But like, if it is very specific, like Brexit or COVID, is it okay to generalize on the industry or the country and then start it as a conversation rather than just like faking it out, because we really don't know.
Don't fake it. Yeah, the old thing, fake it till you make it, that you're gonna go face first into the concrete. Don't do it. You're much better off having a discussion. Yes, you're absolutely right. They're going to know a lot more about it than you do. The reason they're asking the question is they're trying to gauge your level of interest. They're trying to gauge your level of engagement. And I remember somebody once said to what was the thing? Oh, forgive me. I remember somebody's. They're looking to see your level of interest in something. They're not looking for you to have all the answers. They're not expecting you to be omniscient, okay? They're just expecting you to be engaged. And that's more important. Getting it wrong sometimes is not that much of a problem. As I said, the example I had with a candidate from 2 years ago, who, the candidate thought this is terrible. The interviewers thought this is brilliant, okay? So, people just get things. We get things the wrong way around. I want to talk a little bit about hypothetical questions for a moment, because they're very obvious. And the key thing with hypothetical questions is, again, back to method and attitude. And very obvious, they'll say, what would you do if the following thing happened? Now, When you get a hypothetical question, it is quite likely that you don't have the training, experience, or background to deal with the issue. They are, to use an old-fashioned phrase, throwing you in the deep end to see what your reaction is going to be like. So it's important that you stay cool, calm, and collected. Okay, so what's the situation? What was involved? Okay, you want to have a logical, not pre-planned, but a cool, calm. It doesn't matter whether you get it right or wrong. You probably don't have the tools to get it done correctly. They just want to see, how do you react to a novel, challenging situation? So remain cool, calm, collected. Take a moment. Don't be afraid to ask for help. So if they say, well, you're in charge of, and such has happened, what are you going to do? Okay, well, I do A, I do B, I do C. Oh, and I check with my immediate line manager as to what we did the last time this happened. Is there institutional knowledge that I can leverage that I'm just not aware of? And that's one of the things that crops up, particularly for graduates, because as students, we train you to solve problems yourselves, right? That's the whole idea. But when you're out working in an organization, you're solving problems with other people. So don't be afraid to engage with other people and ask for help and ask for assistance. Asking for help is not a sign of a weakness. It's a sign of strength. And in fact, quite funny, as I said, I was involved in a selection process last week, and one of the questions we asked a candidate, and the example she used, she said, well, look, I really didn't know. So I actually contacted my old manager to get some advice on this. And it was interesting watching my colleagues, because they were all going, oh, that was brilliant. This is someone who's not going to sit there and worry about it. They're going to actually, talk to people who can help them. Curveball questions. What's your favorite color? If you don't get this job, what else will you do? What's the sum of every number between 1 and 100? Why are manhole covers round? The only question here that's the real curveball is the second one. If you don't get this job, what else will you do? The reason they ask that question is they're looking for your focus. They're looking to see, where are you going? And it's okay to be applying for similar jobs with similar organizations, even if those organizations are their competitors. They expect that. They would think you were silly if you were not applying for multiple roles, particularly when you're coming to the end of a college program. The other questions, I wouldn't get too worried about them. I think they're asked just to try and unbalance candidates. What does it matter what my favorite color is? And the sum of every 100, it's 5,050. Who cares? I don't think these things are, but they do sometimes come up. They haven't come up recently. We mentioned this one a second ago, Tom. We always have questions to do with them, to do with the job, the organization's future for the development of the role, the influence of macro and micro factors on the organization. You're absolutely right. Questions for them should all be about the role. They should not be about me. They should not be about my salary, my vacation, my benefits. No. When you make me a job offer, we can talk about that then, right? But at the interview stage, it's all about the role and the contribution and where it's going. So I always say, with an interview at the very end, sometimes, and one of my colleagues, actually my boss, is really good at interviewing, and he has a question he asks at the end of any interview. And he always asks, is there anything else that you think we should know? And that gives you a chance to go, have I told them enough about what I need to know? Have I covered all of the silver bullets that I put together before I came in here? Have I put it? And one of the things I would say about virtual interviews is you can have prompts. I was chatting to a friend who had an interview recently, and she said she had a screen like the one I have in front of me, and she had Post-it notes all over the damn thing, reminding her of key points, right? Which you can't do in a real live interview, okay? So don't be afraid to add in the things you need to add in. And equally, don't be afraid. I mean, I was doing a session with some biopharma people a few years ago. And one guy, he was laughing. He was with Pfizer, I think, and he was saying, the number of times that, we get down to the last couple of candidates, we've only got one role, but we've got two really good people, and we're trying to decide which one of them to hire, and we're not sure. And he said the number of times I have called the person we've decided to go with candidate A, we call the candidate, and the candidate goes, oh yes, I really wish, I really wanted this job. This is really where I wanted to go. I'm so thrilled. This is fantastic. And what the guy from Pfizer was saying is, why the hell didn't you tell me that at interview, right? Why didn't you let that passion and that excitement, why didn't you say, I really want to, because that would have made my selection job a lot easier, right? Because we want to hire the people who want to work with us. So don't be afraid to let it out. If you're applying for a job and this is one of the companies you really wanted to work with, tell them, don't be afraid about it. Your interview strategy needs to be proactive and structured, cool, calm, and collected. I've done my homework. I know what I'm bringing. I know why I'm here. I know what's going on. And I'm emphasizing what I'm bringing to the role. This is how I am going to make your life easier when you hire me. And conveying ambition and career planning, which is a big thing. Just briefly, yes, arrive on time. Be dressed appropriately, smile, be engaged, confirm logistics in advance of time. I had one candidate once who turned up for an interview on a Wednesday, and when she arrived, they told her, no, you were meant to be here on Monday. The person who was meant to interview is not here, they're in Sweden. And it was when she could pull out the email that said, please come on Wednesday, they got very embarrassed. But if she had called them on Tuesday and said, I'm just confirming the interview tomorrow at 12 o'clock, they would have gone, no, yesterday, and she wouldn't have had to make the trip. Does this make sense? So don't be afraid to confirm logistics ahead of time. Listen carefully. Always ask for clarification. If somebody asks you a question and you're not sure what this means, ask. With video interviews, dress professionally. As I said, use notes discreetly and practice. Get yourself in front of an interview. I know I've been looking left and right. That's because I'm looking at 2 or 3 different things on the screen at the same time. Get used to looking at the camera little green dot and being prepared for your interview. Whether it's asynchronous or synchronous, make sure that you're set up, you're professional, that your audio is clear and everything else works. I want to do one more little video. I'm sorry about this. I'm going to just drop one more.
No, it's absolutely fine. I think it's very interesting.
Well, here we go. We'll see where this goes. If I can find it. Where did I put it? I want to preface this one before I send it out. And this is one of the things that candidates say to me, Mark, I'm very nervous. I'm very, very, very nervous. I'm anxious. I'm an anxious kind of person. I tried to eat breakfast this morning and, I could barely hold any food down. I'm so nervous. And there are lots of ways around this. The more preparation you do, the less nervous you get. I won't say it gets rid of it, but the less nervous you get. There are breathing exercises you can do. Calm yourself down. Breathe slowly, breathe deeply. There are power postures you can try, and they have a certain validity. But I want to share something now, which I think everyone who's going for an interview ought to bear in mind when they're feeling nervous.
My pressures are not unique. The situations may be different, but everybody has the same kinds of pressures. But what I found, or what I find fascinating, is the interpretation of the stimuli. Let me explain. So I was watching the Olympics, this last Summer Olympics, and I was amazed at how bad the questions were that the reporters would ask all the athletes. And almost always, they asked the same question, whether they were about to compete or after they competed. Were you nervous, right? And to a T, All the athletes went, no, right? And what I realized is it's not that they're not nervous, it's their interpretation of what's happening in their bodies. I mean, what happens when you're nervous, right? Your heart rate starts to go, you sort of get a little tense, you get a little sweaty, right? You have expectation of what's coming, and we interpret that as, I'm nervous. Now, what's the interpretation of excited? Your heart rate starts to go, you're anticipating what's coming, right? You get a little sort of like tense. It's all the same thing. It's the same stimuli, except these athletes, these Olympic quality athletes, have learned to interpret the stimuli that the rest of us would say is nervous as excited. They all say the same thing. No, I'm not nervous. I'm excited. And so I've actually practiced it just to tell myself when I start to get nervous that this is excitement. Yeah. And so I used to speak in front of a large audience, and somebody would say, how do you feel? I used to say, a little nervous. Now when somebody says, how do you feel? I'm like, really excited, actually. And it came from just sort of telling myself, no, this is excitement. And it becomes a little bit automatic later on. But it's kind of a remarkable thing to deal with pressure by interpreting what your body is experiencing as excitement rather than nerves. And it's really kind of effective. It makes you want to rush forwards rather than pull back, and yet it's the same experience.
I can't overemphasize how powerful this is, okay? The idea, what we say to ourselves matters. What we say to ourselves matters. If you get up in the morning and you go, oh God, it's Monday, it's not going to be a good day, right? It's just not going to be a good day. Equally, if you get up in the morning and you say, okay, today's going to be a good day. I'm going to get 3 things done today. And if I don't get 3 done, I'm definitely getting 2 done. You get 2 things done and it's a good day. It's the same thing going into an interview. Am I nervous or am I excited? I want this job. I want to tell them about it. I've got my heart beating. Yes, all that kind of stuff is going on. But at the same time, I am still engaged. I'm still happy about this. I am not so much nervous as excited. So let your excitement out, channel it. And I would say this, you can do this in different ways. I've seen people do this around the dinner table with their children where they're saying, okay, what happened to you that was good today? And it'll go around the table. And at the end of it, everyone is sharing stories about good things that happened to everyone, and it lifts the day. The words we use matter. It's why we tell kids, that's so clever, you're so brave. We don't tell them, you're stupid. That's not what we do. So think about the words that are being used and how you're using them. And the last thing I want to say about an interview is that it's a meeting. That's what it is. It's yet another meeting where you're meeting people and you're talking to them. And the same thing with every meeting you've ever had in your entire life. Have a capsule or an elevator. Have a description of yourself practiced. Have your name, your background, my area of interest. Smile. Hi, thank you for interviewing me today. Be well presented. Be clear in what you're bringing to the role. Be clear in what you're bringing to the role. Why do you think you'd be good at this job? Because of X, because of Y, because of Z. On top of that, my enthusiasm and my ambition and your motivation. Why I want the role and where it's going. Simple, it's straightforward. And that's it. I know we've taken some questions as we've gone along. We can certainly take some questions now if you would like.
Anybody.
Very happy to take some of them. Or indeed any feedback, anybody. And I can share, I meant to say, Saravi and Tombi, I'll send you a PDF of my slides so you can share them if you wish.
That'll be great. So we will also upload this on the YouTube channel. So anybody who missed it, they can just go over and they can have a look at the recording. So for now, if anybody wants to ask anything, they can do that, or you can put it in the chat.
And I do apologize for speaking longer than I meant to. I went off on a tangent from time to time, and I do tend to do that. I do apologize.
my question is like, so I know you mentioned before for weaknesses, tailoring the weakness to the job, but if if it's something like I have trouble speaking up, or I can be like shy, would that be something I would want to say, or would that be like, no, should I have something else?
Well, if that's germane to the role, if you're in a role where you're going to be doing a lot of speaking or a lot of interacting, then you want to show what it is you've done or the steps you have begun to take in order to ameliorate or to show that off. And it can work. It can be quite funny. I mean, I had a friend who is very shy and is not good in social circumstances, who turned out to be a brilliant salesperson because they're very clear when they're engaging with people in a very direct way. So their sales calls do not take 45 minutes. They take 15 minutes, they take 10 minutes. So don't be afraid. If you have got something, think about the ways and the methodologies that you have to ameliorate it and why you think that this could be taken forward.
Yeah. I get that. I guess I was just wondering, would it be bad to say it, or should I pick like another weakness?
It's difficult to say would it be bad to say it. It's very, again, the reason I recommend taking a weakness that's connected to the role is because you're projecting into the role. Okay, because we've all got, multiple weaknesses. Let's face it, we're humans, right? We could sit there all day and tell you about my weaknesses. That's not a problem, right? But when you project it into the role, what you're really saying to your interviewer is, I'm thinking about this, and I'm thinking about how I can contribute and how I can get better and how I can fix. It speaks. It subliminally it speaks to your motivation and your engagement.
I think what you could also say is that I'm still working on my skill to work with more people, and I'm still developing my skills. So as I work with more and more people, I can be more open towards expressing myself, and that is something I'm still working on.
And I think one of the big things that's coming through in terms of everywhere, I mean, recruitment is particularly around intercultural awareness and working with people from different backgrounds. And I think that's something which is, it's increasingly emphasized in graduate recruitment surveys.
Yeah, definitely. Anybody else wanting to say anything, just go ahead. I want to ask something related to technical sides. So,
Okay.
There's so much happening. Like, we cannot possibly know everything. Like, even if we graduate from a CS degree, we get a taste of everything. And I think the degree is only telling you how to learn something, because we did so many random things. Sometimes you're just like, why am I working on this? So, it's only giving you an end result of, okay, you can learn something new in a short time. So maybe we can say that in an interview. I never actually said that I can learn something in a short time, but I think that's what our degree teaches us. So if there's a skill, for example, if they say that we want someone who's a proficient Android developer, and I know Java, but I don't know Android development, I can say that I work with Java, and I'm a quick learner, so I can definitely adapt to Android development. Do you think that is a good way of doing it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the first thing you got to bear in mind, I mean, particularly with an area like CS, where, change is the only constant. I mean, it's a galloping sphere. Therefore, having someone who's pre-programmed or who's able to do, one particular thing really well is no good, because that's going to be redundant in a few years' time. We need people who can grow and learn and move on. And even then, I was talking to somebody who's a lead on a software development team. And what they were saying to me was, I don't do any programming anymore. I do most of my time talking to my client, and I've got a team that's doing the development. They're doing things I don't understand anymore. So, I mean, everything changes, not just from a technical point of view, but growth in terms of your professional skills that will develop when you join an organization as well. But I think you're absolutely right. I think you can say, look, no, in terms of that one, I don't have that. But you know something? I learn fast. And if we're looking at a time horizon to get into this, skills development, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and particularly with particularly with programming skills, because there are so many online and free tools that you can, open access tools that you can use to develop your own capabilities quite quickly. So, I mean, don't be afraid. I mean, I know lots of people who've got CS degrees, but they've taught themselves particular languages or platforms, alongside. Yeah. And that's highly valued.
Does make sense. Is there anyone else who would like to throw in something?
I have one. How good is the answer which says something like, I spend too much time on, like, about the weaknesses, perhaps. So I read an answer which I felt was very unique, which said, I spend too much time on getting every detail to the T instead of focusing on large number of customers or services, for example. It kind of relates with your perfectionist, but it's not actually, directly saying you are a perfectionist. So we can like kind of change it to saying we are in the new role, I'll focus on getting many customers done in a smaller amount of time while not focusing on the details to the T. Is that a...
Yeah, I think that's, there's always a point where you can talk about what you've learned from what you've done wrong, right? You say, look, did I get X done? Yes, I did.
Yeah.
I could have got more out of it if I'd done less. And that's what I've taken away from this, that, what's the aphorism that perfect is the enemy of good, that once we get it to a certain level, and somebody once said to me, if you want to qualify for the 100 meters final, you only have to qualify. You don't have to run the fastest time in the qualifier. You have to run that in the final. So don't be afraid to reach into your background. And very often they will ask you a question. They'll say, can you give us an example of a time when you were working on a project where it failed? Why did it fail? And what did you learn from that? And we've all worked on projects that have failed, right? Or we've all done things that didn't work out the way they were meant to work out, right? And they're more interested in what did you learn from that than the fact that you failed. I mean, everyone fails.
Correct.
Would you like to have everybody else send their questions to us and then we can send it to you, or would you like to hold on for
we can do that. I don't see too many questions coming in on the chat at the moment. So if people want to send on stuff to me later, we can do that. Otherwise, it's a lovely afternoon here. I think ice cream, I can hear ice cream calling me. That might be a way to finish it up. I will send, no problem. I will happy to, again, I want to say thank you very much, Tomvi, particularly for inviting me along today. And I wish you all the best with the rest of your conference. And I hopefully look forward to working with you again in the future.
Thank you so much, Mark. Thank you.
Not at all.
Have a great day ahead. Thank you.